So imagine an FDA inspector walks right into your pharmaceutical plant. And, they completely bypass the sterile clean rooms. They walk right past the million-dollar centrifuges and they point directly to your cloud server.
Yeah, right to the IT rack.
Exactly. And they look at you and say, prove to me that your AI didn't hallucinate the safety report for this batch of heart medication. And if you can't produce the exact verifiable receipts for how that AI reached its conclusion, they don't just write you a fine, they literally shut your entire production line down.
It is a terrifying scenario,
Uh,
honestly.
yeah.
But it is the new reality. Because we are taking this highly dynamic, basically probabilistic black box, which is modern AI,
Hmm.
and we're dropping it right into the middle of a world that is built entirely on strict standard operating procedures.
Right. Total control.
Yeah, uncompromising control is the absolute definition of a regulatory culture clash.
And that friction is exactly what we are getting into in today's deep dive. Because look, AI is everywhere. The efficiency gains are undeniable. But how do you actually deploy it in highly regulated industries like pharma or clinical research or medical device manufacturing without, regulators just shutting you down?
Which they will do.
Oh, absolutely. So to help you navigate this, we are pulling from a remarkably detailed roadmap today. It's an article published back in October 2025 by Omer Simon. He's the CEO and co-founder of Validfor, which is an AI-powered validation platform. The piece is titled AI in the Age of Regulated Work with ALCOA Plus Principles.
And our mission for you today is really to shortcut your learning curve on compliance here. We want to translate these incredibly dense regulatory frameworks into like a practical playbook, something to keep your AI systems trustworthy, transparent, and completely inspector-friendly.
Make it digestible.
Exactly. But before we get into the weeds, I think it's really important to validate any anxiety you might be feeling right now about information overload, because it is a lot. Agencies like the FDA in the US, the EMA in Europe, they're actively scrutinizing the use of AI across the entire product lifecycle.
It's under a microscope.
It really is. But, and this is the crucial part, they are not banning it. They actually recognize its massive value for monitoring and quality control. What they demand, unconditionally, is absolute proof of data integrity.
Right, proof, not just, trust me, the AI is really smart, you need verifiable evidence. But, before we can even look at how to deploy these AI tools on the floor, we have to understand the foundational rulebook those auditors are using to judge them. Okay, let's unpack this. The acronym that dictates everything in this space is ALCOA plus R. What exactly are we talking about here?
Right, so ALCOA Plus is the gold standard for data integrity under GxP, which stands for Good Practice Guidelines, like good manufacturing practice or good clinical practice. The fundamental premise here is that AI does not get a free pass.
No special treatment just because it's new tech.
Exactly. It has to play by the exact same rules as any other electronic record.
Yeah.
So LCOA stands for attributable, legible, contemporaneous, original, and accurate.
Right. And then the plus at the end adds 4 more critical qualities, which are complete, consistent, enduring, and available. And if your data doesn't meet all 9 of those criteria, in the eyes of an auditor, it basically doesn't exist. Or worse, it's considered compromised data.
Which is a huge red flag.
Right. But I have to admit, applying a decades-old framework to a neural network sounds, well, incredibly abstract. Let's try to visualize this for you. Instead of just thinking of AI as like a genius intern, let's look at it like a highly advanced automated testing machine you'd buy for the lab floor.
Oh, that's a good way to look at it.
Yeah, because you wouldn't just plug a new physical machine in, toss a sample inside, and blindly print the final pass or fail sticker.
Right.
No. You need to know exactly who calibrated the machine. That's the attributable part. You need to ensure the raw sensor data wasn't overwritten by the software, so that's original. And you need the entire calibration and run history saved in a secure database so someone can review it, 5 years from now, and that is the enduring part.
What's fascinating here is how perfectly that physical expectation maps to the software regulatory mindset. Like, the UK's MHRA guidance specifically explains that these LLCOA plus expectations apply just as stringently to AI as they do to traditional electronic records under frameworks like the FDA's 21 CFR Part 11.
It all comes back to Part 11.
Always. It is all about preserving the context. Without the context of how the AI arrived at its output, the output itself is completely untrustworthy to an inspector. You aren't just logging the final decision, you're logging the entire chain of custody that led to that decision.
Okay, so if the rulebook demands that we log the entire chain of custody, how do we actually do that mechanically? You can't exactly bolt a physical sensor onto a neural network. How do we capture that context?
Well, This leads us directly into a core concept from the Validfor source, which is the 3 control planes of AI. This is where we see exactly how to build these controls.
Right, where the rubber meets the road.
Exactly. You have to build your controls where the work actually happens. So the first control plane is training data governance.
Because fundamentally, an AI is really only as good as the data it has read, right?
It's precisely. In a GxP environment, you have to treat your training data like a highly controlled batch of reference material. You must prove its provenance, meaning what specific systems did the data come from, what were the extraction methods, what was the exact date range.
Everything documented.
Everything. You also have to document suitability, meaning you need a clear record of the specific inclusion and exclusion rules you use to filter that data, along with bias checks.
Now, the source mentions freezing datasets with cryptographic hashes to prove the data is original. And I want to pause here because that sounds incredibly dense. I mean, I understand freezing data conceptually, but how does a cryptographic hash actually do that?
Yeah, it's a great question. Think of a cryptographic hash as a digital fingerprint for a data set. Imagine you have a terabyte of training data, so millions of batch records, clinical documents, all of it. A hashing algorithm runs through all of that data and generates a single, unique string of characters.
Okay.
If even one comma changes in that massive terabyte of data, or if one single document is removed, the resulting hash changes completely. It won't match.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So by logging that exact hash, you can prove to an auditor mathematically that the exact data the model trained on hasn't been secretly altered or corrupted over time.
Okay, that is bulletproof. But do you have to do that for every single AI tool? Like, what if you're just using an AI to sort administrative emails or schedule maintenance? That level of documentation just seems paralyzing.
Oh, it would be, yeah. But that's where a framework called ICH-U9 comes in. It's a quality risk management framework. It basically dictates that the level of formality and documentation scales based on risk.
Ah, okay. That
Yeah.
makes sense.
All right, so a low-risk administrative AI needs far less rigorous documentation. But if an AI is analyzing the chemical composition of a drug release or making decisions that affect patient safety, the controls, like those cryptographic hashes, must be absolute.
Okay, so plane 1 locks down the training data. Then we have plane 2, which is prompt and parameter control. The article states very clearly, prompts are specifications, therefore every single prompt must be logged with a user ID and a timestamp.
Yes.
But wait, let me push back on this for you listening right now. If you're using an AI to draft, say, a routine deviation report, aren't your prompts just developer notes, like a digital scratch pad?
Right.
Why is every single thing you type into an AI a formally controlled record?
It's a very common reaction, honestly. And it's exactly the kind of assumption that gets companies cited in an audit.
Really?
Absolutely. If a prompt influences a GxP decision or a regulated record in any way, it is absolutely part of that record's context. If you don't log the prompt, you break the attributable rule of LCOA plus AO because we literally don't know who asked the AI to do the work.
Right, because the user is hidden.
Exactly. And you also break the contemporaneous rule because there is no timestamp of when that instruction was actually given.
Ah, I see. So if the AI makes a catastrophic mistake down the line, the auditor needs to know, was the AI hallucinating on its own? Or did the human operator give it a terrible instruction that forced the error?
Exactly. They need to know the root cause. And this maps directly to the FDA's Part 11 expectations for secure, time-stamped audit trails. The system has to independently record who did what, when, where, and to which object.
Wow.
Yeah. You need to log the full prompt text, the parameters like the temperature setting of the model, which dictates its creativity, and any hidden system instructions. And most importantly, you must ensure that earlier prompt entries are never obscured or deleted by the system.
All right, so we have the training data locked down. We have the exact prompts logged. But none of that really matters if the AI hallucinates the final answer and nobody catches it right. How do we police the actual output?
That is plane 3, the output lifecycle. The fundamental takeaway here is that the AI's output is almost never the final GxP record.
Okay.
You have to capture the raw output, any software transformations applied to it, and crucially, the human decision. The EMA stresses this heavily. There must be defined human oversight for material decisions. A human basically has to review the AI's work and formally approve it.
And you have to retain all of that, the raw AI output and the final human-approved record for the full retention period, right? To satisfy the enduring and available principles.
Correct. You're proving that a human was always in the loop and you have the hard data to back it up.
Okay, so we've locked down the training data, we've tracked exactly what the human asked the AI to do, and we've logged the final human approval. I mean, that is a massive amount of data being generated every single day.
Mountains of it.
Right. So what happens when the FDA inspector actually knocks on the door? How do you organize this mountain of data without just handing them a tangled mess of raw server logs?
Well, the goal, according to the source, is to build what they call an inspector-friendly evidence pack. It should literally take an auditor minutes to review and understand the entire story of how an AI decision was made.
Minutes.
Yes. The article lists 5 specific artifacts that need to be in this pack. First, the data lineage report.
Right, which proves exactly what Training Snapshot the live model is using, relying on those cryptographic hashes we talked about earlier.
Exactly. Second is the prompt log. But not just a massive unsearchable database of every prompt ever typed. It needs to be tied directly to the specific record under review.
Makes sense. What's the third artifact?
The output bundle. And we need to be clear about how this works. This isn't just a simple screenshot of the final answer. The output bundle has to show the raw, unedited AI response, followed by any post-processing rules the system applied to format it, and finally the explicit digital signature of the human who reviewed and approved it.
So the whole journey. Okay, fourth.
Fourth is the model version register, detailing exactly which version of the AI model was used at that specific second in time.
And the fifth artifact.
A challenge test summary. This aligns with that ICH Q9 risk assessment we brought up. It is documented proof that you actively tried to break the AI.
Like stress testing it.
Yeah, exactly. You tested it with edge cases, bad data, contradictory prompts, all to prove to the auditor that when the AI fails, it fails safely and predictably, rather than quietly outputting dangerous errors.
If you hand an inspector those 5 artifacts perfectly mapped to ALCOA plus DESs, you are speaking their language. You are showing them that your AI is operating within a controlled, verifiable perimeter. But, I mean, to actually generate these artifacts, your underlying audit trails have to be flawless, right? What exactly does a flawless audit trail look like?
This is where the PICS guidance document, specifically PI 041-1, becomes really critical. It lays out the exact mechanics of a compliant audit trail. It is not enough to just log a generic system message saying, model updated. A compliant audit trail must capture 5 distinct elements for every single event. You need the exact timestamp, the actor meaning the specific user ID, the action taken, the unique object ID being modified, and both the old and new values of that object.
So to put that in perspective for you listening, if a user changes an AI prompt parameter from, say, a temperature of 0.2 to 0.7, the audit trail must record that John Doe made the change at 10:04 a.m., targeting Model X, changing the parameter value from 0.2 to 0.7.
Exactly. And that trail can never be obscured or deleted.
Yeah.
But of course, companies frequently miss the mark here when they're trying to rush an AI implementation.
Yes, the pitfalls. Because the Validfor source outlines a few common ways companies just completely break ALCOA plus when deploying AI. One of them is only logging the final output. As we just discussed, that breaks the complete and original principles because all the context of how the AI arrived at the output is gone.
Poof. Vanished.
Yeah. Another pitfall is treating training data as a moving target instead of freezing it. But here's where it gets really interesting. The pitfall of model auto updates.
Oh, this is a massive, massive issue with modern cloud-based AI. Tech companies love pushing silent updates to improve their models.
Right. But the source says allowing a model to auto-update without change control completely breaks the consistent and accurate principles. I mean, letting an AI model auto-update in the background is like letting a legal team rewrite a contract and disappearing ink after you've already signed it.
That's a great analogy.
Thanks. But seriously, the mathematical weights and parameters of the neural network shift dynamically, meaning the exact same prompt you used yesterday will now generate a completely different outcome today. That completely destroys your consistent ALCOA metric. You just can't do it.
That disappearing ink analogy is spot on. It explains the mechanism of the failure perfectly. Because in regulated work, model weights, network architectures, and even your libraries of approved prompts must be treated as strict configuration items. You can't just let an algorithm mutate in the background.
Even if it makes it better.
Even if it's an improvement from the vendor. For every single change, you have to assess the impact, decide the level of testing required, and release it under strict change control.
And the work doesn't stop once the model is released under change control, does it?
No, not at all. Continuous monitoring is mandatory.
Hmm.
You have to schedule periodic reviews to check for what the industry calls drift.
Right, drift.
You check for usage drift, meaning are your employees using the AI for tasks it wasn't even validated for? You
Yeah.
check for data drift. Has the real-world data changed so much that the historical training data is basically no longer relevant? And you have to track any KPA's corrective and preventive actions that were opened specifically because of AI errors.
Which brings up a really practical problem. We've been talking a lot about how to govern an AI system internally. But in the real world, most pharmaceutical or manufacturing companies aren't building their own large language models from scratch. They are buying them.
Right, they're licensing them.
Yeah, they're using vendor APIs or massive cloud platforms. So how do you force a tech giant to comply with your highly specific GxP audit trail requirements?
It requires a fundamental shift in how you handle vendor oversight. You have to extend your internal supplier controls directly to your AI vendors. You can't just sign up for an enterprise API key, plug it into your workflow, and magically assume the vendor is compliant with life science regulations.
Because if the vendor loses the data or updates the model silently, you get the audit finding.
Exactly, it's your neck on the line. The source points out that EU GMP Annex 11, which covers computerized systems, is currently being revised to drastically strengthen lifecycle controls and supplier oversight. Furthermore, regulators are introducing a brand new section, Annex 22, specifically focused on AI.
Wow.
So right now, you need to be building strict requirements into your vendor contracts. You need service level agreements, or SLAs, for exactly how they handle model updates, how quickly they report security incidents, where your data physically resides, and crucially, you need an ironclad guarantee that you can export all your evidentiary logs on demand.
That is a lot of leverage you have to negotiate up front. And speaking of the European Union, we have another major layer of complexity here, which is the EU AI Act.
Yes, the big one.
Yeah. The source notes that this sweeping legislation entered into force back on August 1st, 2024, and it has phased obligations that are rolling out right now through 2025 and 2026, the year we are currently in. So what does this all mean for you listening today in 2026? Does this new EU AI law just replace all the GMP rules we just spent the last 15 minutes talking about?
Well, if we connect this to the bigger picture, it's vital to understand the difference between vertical regulations and horizontal laws.
Okay, break that down.
So GMP rules are vertical. They apply specifically to the life sciences and manufacturing sectors. The EU AI Act, however, is horizontal. It applies broadly across all industries functioning within the EU. So, to answer your question, no, it absolutely does not replace your GMP validation requirements.
It sits on top of them.
Yes, it reinforces them. The EU AI Act imposes strict governance, transparency, and risk management requirements based on the risk level of the AI system. But what the Validfor article brilliantly points out is that many of those horizontal obligations map directly to the evidence you should already be keeping for your GMP compliance.
Oh, like the risk management assessments, the data lineage documentation, the human oversight logs.
Precisely. If you are rigorously following ALCOA Plus and maintaining those 3 control planes we discussed, you are already generating the vast majority of the evidence required to demonstrate compliance with the EU AI Act.
That's a relief.
It is. You just need to coordinate with your legal team, especially as the rules for high-risk systems become fully enforceable by August 2026, to ensure your documentation aligns with their specific reporting formats.
So treating your AI with extreme GxP rigor actually future-proofs you against these broader international laws. That is a massive return on investment for doing the hard work of compliance up front.
It really is. It turns compliance from a bottleneck into a strategic advantage.
Let's summarize the core journey we've taken today. AI is an unbelievable unlock for regulated work. I mean, it can process data and find patterns at scales we can barely even comprehend, but you can only harness that power if you treat the AI with the exact same, if not more, rigor as human-generated data. You have to keep your training data locked down and version controlled. You have to treat every single prompt you type as a legally binding specification, fully logged and timestamped. And you must always, always keep a human in the loop to review and approve the final output. If you do that and package it into an inspector-friendly format, you aren't just surviving an audit, you are mastering the future of work.
This raises an important question, though, and it's something I'd love to leave you with to mull over. We've established that in a regulated environment, every single prompt you type to an AI is now a permanent, auditable record.
Right?
How is that going to change the psychology of the modern worker? We are used to chatting with computers informally.
Right.
But if your chat log is a legally binding document that an FDA inspector might scrutinize in 3 years, will prompting compliance become as essential a skill as grammatical literacy?
Oh, wow.
Yeah? Are we about to see a fundamental shift in how humans are trained to speak to machines?
That is a fascinating thought. It's no longer just about getting the machine to do the work, it's about speaking to the machine in a way that proves how the work was done. It is literally a whole new language of compliance. Well, that is all the time we have for today. We want to thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive. If you want to start bulletproofing your own AI systems today, I highly recommend checking out the original Validfor article. It has actual templates and data log examples you can copy directly to build your own inspector-friendly evidence packs. Until next time, remember, when you bring that AI black box onto the sterile manufacturing floor, make sure you bring the receipts with it.